All right, so we've covered workspaces. We know where everything is at in the app. We've talked about organizing your files, putting them in the right places. We've also talked about how to bring in your files and then sync the video and the audio and create a multicam. So now let's get to the main point of a video editing piece of software is to actually edit the video. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to actually go through an edit of a video. I might not do the entire video, but I'll show you how I would edit a video. And then I will actually go to the next step, which is exporting, which I know a lot of people have questions about because there are so many different options and settings and little bars to slide and actually they just get really confusing. So I'm gonna focus on that in this video. So let's go ahead and zoom out of the entire timeline. And we still have our multicam sequence that we did in the previous one. We've already switched over the channels for my main source of audio, muted the other one. So the one we muted, I'm just gonna minimize that a little bit. And we can see here that I actually already did some multicam changes. So I'm going to delete all of that and just drag this out again so that we don't have those multicam changes. And we'll just go ahead from the beginning, we'll stick with this main clip. So typically when I'm recording, I try to do a clap at the beginning. And so you can see that here by me zooming in, and I go ahead and do a clap there. And that really helps with syncing. If I expand this audio, then that clap is just really helpful. So anything before the clap is junk. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit C for my razor tool, that's my shortcut for it, and then hold Shift, and it'll cut through all of the tracks. I'm gonna click V to go back to the selection tool, select everything before that cut, and what I'm gonna do next is called a ripple delete. And a delete would just be, let's delete these things I have selected and leave everything else where it is. A ripple delete will make everything in front of that piece, and actually for you, it's gonna be this side, everything in front of that will ripple back to as far back as it can go and as far back as you've selected. So if I go ahead and zoom out completely here, ripple delete for me is Shift Delete, and you can see that everything that I had selected went away and everything else shifted back to that point. So I can do the same thing with this blank area here, Shift Delete, and that ripple deletes so that the very first frame is me on screen right there. So another thing that I would do pretty early on is I would figure out just the audio level overall where I need to be. These points where it's really high and peaking is where I'm clapping. So that's gonna throw off any adjustments I make. So I'm gonna wait till the end to do that. But let's just go through and let's find a section of the video to edit like I would normally. So we'll go ahead and zoom in here and let's just see what I'm saying. And last up at number 5 is Marmoset. Marmoset is another great option to try to find and license some music for your videos. So I'm gonna go ahead and clip pretty close here by holding Shift when I click the razor tool, and then that will get rid of anything before that. So I could essentially start it here. Step at number 5 is Marmoset. And then maybe when I say Marmoset, right here, let's say I want to switch to angle 2, Marmoset, and show Marmoset. And it looks like I'm on the login screen a little bit. So let's undo that, go a few more frames, and we'll go ahead and click 2. So I'll switch to angle 2. But you can see here that I shot the video at 1080p and I recorded my screen at 1440p. But what I actually need to do, since it's way too zoomed in on my screen recording, is I need to actually change the scale on that. So what I can do is I can go over to that nested clip I made when I created the multicam, double click that, and now I can go ahead and adjust each of the 2 video tracks in the multicam. So if I select the screen flow part, go to effects controls, then go to motion, I can go ahead and scale that back a little bit so you can see the entire screen. Somewhere around 75 looks right. And now you can actually see the tabs that I had open and you can see what I'm doing on the screen. And now if I jump back over, you can see that updated the multicam piece, because you have to think of the nesting as something you can go and change, and it'll change anywhere else that it's using. So it's being used. So that's how I went ahead and changed that. So I am talking there about, I say it's another great option. Let me go back to me. Go ahead and hit play. And license some music for your videos. What I like best about Marmoset, and so then I say what I like best about Marmoset, and then I would go back and then I start actually using it and talking about why I like it and things like that. So that's kind of the basics of going through multicam and switching the different angles and doing the edit. And really the only tools I'm using are, I'm using the razor tool, which I've set to shortcut for C. And then I'm doing ripple deletes when I'm getting rid of things. And so let's just go through a section here where I'm talking. I think it's probably another take of me saying what I was saying before. So I'll go ahead and razor through that whole section, switch it to angle 1. Up at number 5 is Marmoset, which is another great option. They have a huge library and they have really good search tools to use. My favorite part is when you go to browse, you actually fill out a formula for what kind of video you're making. So you could say that your project is bouncy and angelic and is a journey, and it'll specifically pick songs that fit in within those mood words that you're using. And you can also still use things like energy, whether there's vocals or not, instrumentals only. And my most favorite part of Marmoset is the arc section. So you can specifically look at songs. So I'm gonna stop there, but you can see how I'm watching through, and if I'm talking to the camera like I am right now, I will actually be on angle 1. And then when I kind of turn towards my computer or I start to do something on my computer, I'll hit 2, and then it'll switch to that angle. And you go through in that format until you get to the end of a clip. So let me get to the end of something right now. Arc, because it's flat, but you know what I mean. And then I would go ahead and cut that whole section with the razor, holding shift. And then there's a bunch of dead space. Try to find the next point when I talk. So maybe like right here. So that's it. That's 5 different places. And then I would go ahead and razor through all of these, hit the selection tool, select all of those different tracks, shift delete to ripple, and then I would have a clean cut that would look like this. But you know what I mean. So that's it. And I would probably tighten that up a little bit, or I might hide the cut a little bit by having this zoomed in some. There are a lot of different things you can do to hide cuts and make them change and look less abrupt, but keeping them short, changing the zoom on them, changing angles, those are all things to keep the cuts pretty clean. So I basically do that through the whole video. I watch through all the good sections. I would switch angles for when I'm talking. I would cut out any mistakes. And you can see in a lot of places I have these 2 hand claps here. If I zoom in, you can see if I play this. If I play this, yeah. So that just means the piece right before that is good. And then if I have a mistake, so I mess up here, 3 little snaps for me means the thing right before that is a mistake. So I don't always remember to do that after every single take, but if I mess up, it's just kind of a reset. I go, and then I know that that thing right before it was a mistake, except for in this example when it's not a mistake and I'm just showing you guys. But the 2 claps usually means I'm moving on to the next part of my script. And this just really helps during editing, if I do it during production, to know, okay, that little piece right before the 3 clicks, I know that's not gonna be good. I don't even have to watch it. And it just saves a little bit of time. So I pretty much get through the whole video that way, just watching it in order. If there's 3 little snaps, that section's not good. If there's 2 claps, it means I'm moving on to a new section. And once everything is all edited, let's say this chunk here is ready to go, and I can do in to out, and I can export just that part. Let's say you're working on a project and you want to show someone just a specific piece of it without exporting the whole video. You can export from in to out, and I hit I for in and O for out there, or you can export the entire project. So let's say let's say this video is done and I'm ready to export it. I would go ahead and go to File, and then go to Export, and then go to Media. And it pops up an entirely new dialog, and I'm gonna walk through this because it can get complicated, but that's a pretty good frame for me to rest on. So the easiest way is to click Match Sequence Settings. And what this will do is it will match with whatever file type your video is that you brought in. But this means it'll export with just the settings you had as default when you brought in the footage and when you made the sequence. So that's not necessarily what you always want to do, but that will keep a lot of the quality of what your original thing you made was. So if you're formatting for the web, H.264 is pretty much the format that is used everywhere. And so if you select the format dropdown, you'll see H.264. There's Blu-ray if you want to do QuickTime or MPEG, or if you're just doing audio, if you're just exporting the audio, you could select MP3. So there are a lot of options, but H.264 is pretty much the best for the web. As far as presets go, there are a lot of them. One of the best ones to use is just this match source high bit rate. So it'll take whatever your original source is and export at a pretty high bit rate. But there are a lot of other ones. And so if you know you're going to YouTube, for example, at 1080p or 4K, or you're going to Vimeo, or you're going to a tablet or something like that, and you're trying to show it on an iPad or an iPhone or something, there are a bunch of different presets, and you can even make your own and save them as well. But what I end up doing a lot of the time is I'll go YouTube 1080p because it's a decent bit rate. It's at like 16 megabits per second. It does one pass, which means it's a fairly quick export, but there might be a little bit of artifacting in it. Whereas if you go 2-pass, it actually exports the video and then goes through again and like checks to make sure it did it correctly. And so that's what the 2-pass is. And you can change the bit rate, but as you change the bit rate, if you make it way bigger, you can see the file size here went up to 250 versus when it was down at like 16, the file size was 120. So it almost got twice as big because the bit rate was twice as big. There's tabs in here to do different things. I don't usually change the effects tab because I like to do my effects within Premiere. The video tab is where you're going to change the resolution if you want a low resolution. You're going to change the level of like the color profile, whether or not you want it to render at maximum depth. I usually check that. It just takes a little bit more time. Usually check maximum render quality. If you've done a bunch of rendering already before you're exporting, you can click Use Previews. And that's the main thing. Those are the main things on the video tab you're going to use. As far as audio, I usually just keep this the same. Whatever bit rate my audio came in as, whatever sample rate it came in as, stereo, etc., I keep that the same. And I don't really use the multiplexer or the captions that are hard-coded, or I don't typically publish directly to a platform. But if you wanted to be done with your video, export it and walk away and have it go live or be listed as private somewhere, you can click this publish thing. You can check YouTube or Vimeo or to Creative Cloud or to an FTP site or something. You can log in, say whether it's public or private, put the tag in the description, and the title is actually going to come from this output name here. So I prefer not to export and have it directly upload. I would use it if I was in a hurry and I really just wanted it to begin uploading immediately upon export, but I don't typically use that. So what I instead do is, if you're doing one video file and you go ahead and click export, it will export the video and it will lock up Premiere. So I click export. I can't do anything in Premiere while this thing's exporting and rendering. So that's not usually the best solution. So what I do instead is I hit Q. And what Q does is it opens up Adobe Media Encoder. And this is really helpful. Let me go ahead and make this full screen here, because while it's exporting, you can still use the project file. You can still make changes. You can duplicate the sequence. You can keep working on it if you want. So if you're making a revision and you just want to start getting one out so you can share it to someone, but keep working on the file, you're going to want to do something like this in Media Encoder. What I use this for is I'll actually duplicate and make a few different copies of them and then I'll make one that has a YouTube preset, one that's a little bit lower quality that I use for my iTunes podcast, and maybe there's one where I want someone to do the transcript. Then I'll do an MP3. And now I have all three of these files, which I can rename or change presets over here from, but I can click play, and then they'll all kind of start at the same time, or they'll do one at a time, depending on your settings. But you can see here, the MP3 is gonna finish before all the video files. So this is just helpful to be able to still use Premiere and make multiple versions of your video if you're going to be uploading them to different places or making backups of them. So that walks through how to do basic video editing using ripple delete, using the razor tool, the selection tool, zooming in and out, and how to make your cuts, as well as how to export, how to make some basic decisions on how high quality you want your videos to be when you export them, and how to directly publish them, as well as use Media Encoder to batch export things and still be able to use Premiere while it's doing that. So this is a long video, but I hope you learned a little bit about how to do some basic editing, as well as being able to export your videos. And in the next free video, we're going to be talking about color correcting, which was really, really hard in Premiere, but they've made it a little bit easier. So I'm going to take some footage and mess around with it and do some color correcting and teach you a little bit about using the scopes, as well as using the new tools in the Lumetri color panel. So stay tuned for that one, and I'll see you there.